Brolin, we're excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
I
having
know
me.
it had to be a little bit later, and I told everyone that you're behind in time, but I don't know if everyone gets it. But my explanation was it's the middle of your workday. It's not like the end of the workday like it is in the East Coast, or the middle of the night as it is in Uganda. So just to get us started, on behalf of Team EIE and everybody on this call and everyone that's going to be on Facebook Live, I just want to say thank you for agreeing to do this. We appreciate it highly. We're so excited to hear your story. Everyone that's on the call, if you have a question, just throw it in the chat for me. I will get the questions from Facebook Live too later on in the conversation. But to get us started, Brolin, could you just take us back to the beginning? Give us a little bit of a
Right.
background of parents, where you were born, and just get us from there to you get to America.
Okay. Well, hopefully I could do this briefly. But thank
Trust
you
me,
so
you
much.
have time. Like, don't even worry about it. Share your story.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for having me and allowing me to share my story. Where can I start? I was born in Mawejje, India, uh, right outside of Kampala, actually Mawejje Hospital. Uh, I come from a family. At the time when I was born, I had about six siblings, six older siblings, and I was the last born. Born to pretty humble beginnings. Just a city kid who later on kind of grew up with his siblings. Went to boarding school. I went to Holmesdalen for school, for primary. Also had a time where I got 1 year to go to Kampala parents. But majority of my childhood until the age of 12 was in Uganda. And a lot of my upbringing was kind of around my family, my siblings, and kind of around Much India and Kampala. Around the age of, I want to say around the age of 11, we found out and reconnected with my mom who was living abroad at the time. Found out that it was the US and actually did get that opportunity to move to the US um, and get a green card to go visit my mom, my sister, myself, and my two other sisters got that opportunity. And at the age of 11 and a half, almost 12, I moved to Massachusetts, just right outside the city to a small town called Lincoln. So I went to middle school in Massachusetts, um, bounced around schools, went from public school to private school on scholarship and on sports, and then got an opportunity to move to Wyoming um, with a family. One of my best friends' family took me in, so I had an opportunity to move with them to the other side of America, see the other side of America. Through that, got introduced to the outdoor space. Really pushed the envelope on what I wanted to do educational wise. I came from a very educational minded family, and books is the way out of poverty type of thing. And the rest kind of is the rest is history. Here we are now.
I know. And just walk us through, how was your transition moving from Uganda to here?
Wow, I mean, the transition was completely different. Two different environments, circumstances. I remember I was in P5 going into P6, so that's primary six. And it's kind of that stage as you're preparing for P7 and getting ready to become a little bit of a teenager and transform into your environment and get more comfortable. I was uprooted and just had to leave, go to a completely new world, learn how to, engage with a whole new circumstance, with my family, being a Baganda, HT, the whole church aspect, and also kind of maintaining it with like learning my friends and making friends. Um, I think that was the biggest thing. So the transition was shocking. It took, man, I want to say it took me about 2 years to really fully slowly get my own footing on the ground and start to know that okay, I'm in America. This is what life is going to be now. How do I make the best of it?
And you know, the good thing is you've talked about like the transition took 2 years. Like that's not a joke. Like 2 years is a really long time. Can you walk us through, and this is from the perspective of a young Black man going, first of all, when did you even realize that like you had made that switch from like being Ugandan to like being a Black man? Like when did it hit you?
I mean, I think it probably, to be truthful, hit me as soon as I got there. But catching up to, there was a language barrier. I'm a Baganda, Njogera Luganda, fluently in my own household, we spoke Luganda. So not having the language completely grasped and understood allowed me to miss all that. I think a lot of, from being bullied to you're the new kid on the block, you're from a weird country, to people thinking, you live in the village and you run around with no clothes, to, the whole stereotypes that get thrown at you all came towards me. And I think at the time, especially in fifth grade, because I had to repeat primary five, so I repeated fifth grade. And in fifth grade, all that was coming at me, but it was just like, through one ear out the other, because I was getting used to my mother. So just to give you a context, my mother had left our family when I was two, when I was about one and 9 months. So the time moving to America to meet my mother, this was almost person who looked like me, but was a foreigner. And we all understand, African parenting and parents, they make a lot of sacrifices, and they look at their children, especially their male children, as that next, kind of the person who's going to carry the baton and move it forward for the whole family.
For sure.
And that was a huge expectation, from my mom, and the presidents that she set. She really made that very clear that, you're a male child of the Uganda, you're Musajja, you have to be the Musajja of the house. You got to step up. You have to do it right now. You can't look at your peers as an example of when to do it, because, they're white and they came from America. You come from different circumstances.
Right. And I'm glad you touched on that, because I think very few of us truly understand that, like, when you transition here, especially if you had one parent in the US and another parent maybe in Uganda, you were in Uganda, your parent was here, you're meeting a whole new person. You're not meeting the person that left you, God knows, how old you were. And that can be really hard. So can you talk me through the support systems that you had during middle school, kind of going from, from public school to private school, and being in private school and scholarship? Like, what were those support systems for you?
I mean, I think that's where my story gets interesting and becomes a little bit difficult to really understand for a lot of people that dream of the American dream. You go to America, everything is, grass is green on the other side, things are going to be happier. You got to remember, I left Uganda at 12. My father was raising me as a single father, raising 7 kids, plus, some of his relatives. So our cousins also lived with us. So he was a strong African man, raising a household with discipline. You guys all can understand that certain level of discipline. Then I moved over to America. My mom's working 2 jobs. We never knew how she was making all this money. We didn't know how she was, surviving. And you come and you see the survival, and you see some of your friends, parents, and what they do, and you see what your mom does, and you're like, wow, this is like, she's really extending herself. So she liked to say, I had a big head, and it was like the whole teenagehood just kind of emerging. So what happened is me and my mom clashed. We did not get along. It really was the polar opposites. And as a male man in America, the thing she made very clear is police, the law, this is a reality. They will either kill you, they'll send you back to Africa, or I'll have to do it myself and send you back. So that, for her, it was almost like the level of protection. If she does the justice of like disciplining, or if she gets there before anybody outside the household gets there through the what's happening, that allows her to justify, like, hey, I'm disciplining you so you don't get into the system or become like the Banyagas we see on TVs, or the African Americans. That time always was like very associated, and being careful on like how I stepped, how I moved. So my support system really, I moved away from home when I was 12 and a half. So I lived with my mom for a year and a half, about 2 years. And so it was a short-lived stay. And it was really a fight between, my sisters were there. My sisters also had just moved in the same opportunities, and everybody's trying to settle and trying to be in one roof, one household at the same time. I'm a male child. I have a lot of testosterone. I have a lot of energy. She's not as used to that. So it was just best for me to move in with a family, with a guardian actually that helped us make the move to America instead of going through the systems. So with that option on the table, my support system was very shaky. A lot of that time it was myself. It was that whole idea of like, I used to be from, I'm from much India, I can do anything, this is America. So I'll be able to survive. And I think that's what got me into the whole make friends, make sure you make friends with everybody. And I was a well-liked person, thank God, because I joined a couple of local sports, started playing sports right away. And I utilized that as the road to get me into the community. And while I was homeless at times and kind of living with strangers, I just kind of used the whole focus, study sports to just kind of, put food in my belly when I was hungry and to give me the drive I needed.
Yeah. And, you just shared something very interesting, which is there was a point where you had to make a decision. Was the decision to move out highly based on just pursuing your dreams and saying, this is the right next step for me? And if so, how did you even come to that decision?
Well, as a person who lived through that whole life kind of stage of life, I don't think I made that decision myself. So to set a context, I moved from the city where you have your neighbors, everybody, the kids on the village street, the whole road, you know where to go buy tomatoes, where to go buy, firewood. Everything was well known, to a neighborhood where you live in what you might call like apartment style housings here in America, and everybody is kind of like doesn't want to have anybody know what's happening in their house, but you're living so close together. And whether there were fights or, I wanted to go play with a friend and I showed up too late, my mom is an African woman. So she would like, be ready to discipline, be ready to raise a voice. And around white people, what they started to do, and I don't want to say white people as like a negative, but around neighbors, what the neighbors started to do is they would peer around their curtains, start to make phone calls, start to kind of make little remarks. So the school was involved, like as if the children were not getting enough attention. The police started to get involved. So the decision really was a mutual decision of it's best for everybody involved, including my sisters who had just come from America. For a family who just moved, an immigrant family, when the police start to get a little nosy, it actually turns to be worse. So I commend her. I had a guardian. She was 62 at the time, a lady, a client of my mom's who turned into a friend. And she was a great advisor for my mom. She was an older lady, almost like we come from a culture of respecting older ladies, respecting your elders. So my mom really listened to her and was able to hear her out. And through her guidance and her advice, it was just best to split and make that decision of dividing, at least for the time being. No one knew how long it would be, but for that time, for that chapter, it was just the best decision.
Okay. So you've made the decision, you're going out of home. How does sports come into this whole thing? And what kind of sports? Because I'm pretty sure you didn't wake up and were like, yeah, I'm going to start snowboarding.
Well, the sports that came to mind was anything that I could try to do. So I was a big football fan. Soccer was my sport coming up, but I never got a chance to play. And what I did is I had such broken English, man. I couldn't speak anything. I had my British English on from Holmes Dowling and all the nursery rhymes, ready to tell the teachers how much English I knew. Ended up being bullied by everybody, ended up being teased, just feeling alone because after school, I could not relate to my sisters. We're not having the same conversations. My older sister, stopped school from Gayaza to go to America. So that was traumatic for her. My other sister had stopped another school, to go to the American high school system. So they were going through their own trauma. So at home, I'm not talking to anybody. At school, I'm having issues. And what I ended up doing is I started with soccer, because I was fast enough and I was, I guess, good enough. They allowed me to play. And in order for my teammates to play with me, they had to talk to me. So they had to communicate with me. They had to teach me English. They had to teach me like the lingo. And
That's
to get me
smart.
comfortable, I played center back and I was pretty fast. So I moved from midfield to control the back line in soccer. And because I was good at doing that, you almost like commanding the top field. So everybody and the coaches the coaches started picking me up from my
Yeah.
house. The coach's son started talking to me. When you're a value to somebody, especially in America, if you're a value to them, everything changes. They'll make the effort. So that's really how it started.
That's true. And you talk about something very interesting. If you never establish value, nobody will, you have to establish value for somebody to treat you like
Yeah.
someone or something,
Yeah.
And that's just, you talk about a very real experience, like just, the British English is different. The language is different, but you have to find a way to fit in. And for you, it was sports. Like you took refuge and said, you know what, this is where I fit in and this works for me. But you also made the most of what you got, which is literally what Engage. That's our like slogan, which is like what you have. If you make the most of it, you can get somewhere, wherever it is. So walk us through from soccer to snowboarding.
Yeah,
What
I guess,
happened?
to comment on the slogan thing, I visited my sister once, my older sister at Guyaz, and they had this like slogan. It's kind of a silly slogan, but I used to say it
Yeah.
in my head, like, never give up. I remember it was in red
Mm,
letters, as you come into the school and the arches. I always tell myself, oh, never give up, never give up, you're a Baganda man, never give up.
yeah.
It's such a chip on my shoulder
Yeah.
that my transition from soccer to snowboarding happened to I started to make a lot of friends. Kids knew, there would be kids who I moved into a suburb. So a lot of the kids had such a simpler life and did not have a complex, backstory or beginning. So for them, they looked at me as like, oh, wow, you're homeless and you're doing this and that. And you're still like coming. So it was almost like a surprise every day, every month. I don't know if they were thinking I'll fall on my feet, on my face, or if I was going to make it. But for them, they're almost like watching a show. So it was intriguing to them. So through that aspect and interaction, my close friends were moved into other sports. We started to play a little basketball. And once winter came, I'm a Ugandan man. I don't like the cold. I stay in the house. You run to the house, lock the doors, everything is down.
Mhm.
Pull out the big jacket, blanket,
Right.
Nkubiranga. The sun's back out. I'll be
Right.
back out. Um, and that's what I did the first winter. I showed up in winter when I flew, so it was mysterious to me. I was like, wow, how can people live like this? This is ridiculous. I'm gonna die in America. Second winter comes, and I for sure knew I was gonna die in America because this time, my home issues were issues, like so you don't have that same warmth of like comfort. So I'm like, oh man, America's gonna kill me. So the way I did it, I was like, you know what? I just gotta conquer the cold. I need to just get involved, or else the cold is gonna be the end of me. And I joined an after-school program that was taking kids once a week. Would take kids to a mountain. So it picked kids that were at risk. My mom was not around, and after school I didn't have anywhere to go. So I would join an after-school program every day to try to stay busy. And through that program, we would go and get introduced to the mountains. And then I met more friends as I went to the mountain through the program. So we started skateboarding. That's really was my introduction to it. And I took the athleticism that I had in soccer and all that, and my whole like, I'm alone, I'm lonely, and I'm just like, an outcast. And I just put that focus into that. So as I got good in that, people were like pulling me, oh, come, giving me a call. Hey, my mom's taking me here and here. Will you come skate with me? My mom said you can come over for dinner. My mom said that. So slowly, the kids I was looking to try to be friends were actually calling me to be my friend because I knew that like if I called them, they'll never pick up. So I was like, all right, just focus on yourself, you know. That's why that transition was a 2-year transition. It's like you're so alone. Just the language itself, you don't have the same jokes, you don't watch the same shows. Well, I didn't even know TV. I'd never seen a TV. I'd seen a TV in Uganda, but the idea of turning on a TV in the middle of the day, I didn't even know about that.
Right. That's true. So I'm gonna tell you, I know about snowboarding just because I went to school in upstate New York. So like Greek Peak was my second home. But for people who have no idea what snowboarding is about, can you just walk us through like what even is the board? And like, you know, what do you have to wear? Like, I don't know. Just walk us through like what the whole thing is.
Well, I can do that for sure. You know, I like to describe snowboarding like a lot of people have seen kite. If you go to Mombasa, you could see kind of kite surfing or surfing on water, and skateboarding has grown in Africa a lot. So it's skateboarding on snow. So snow, the Mozilla, is pretty much on a cold slope. It's ice, ice shaving that allows you to slide just like you're sliding on water. So it's movement on water that's frozen, just like skateboarding. It's the best way. Um, the board, I mean, it gets complicated. The board is made out of, it's made out of wood and a little bit of metal. The most important thing is the gear that I wear. So almost a protective gear to protect you from the cold, keep you warm, and also keep you moving and active. You almost wear a jacket-like suit that you put on to protect you from the cold. You have a helmet for safety for your head. I usually wear a mouth guard depending on what type of activity I'm doing that day. Goggles to protect your eyes. And I myself, I still do not like the cold to this day, so I cover up head to toe. You know, you'll think I'm an army sniper, all covered up. No cold for me.
Okay. So, you know, and you just talked about, you know, meeting your friends and deciding like you'll go to the mountain once or twice. When did you make the decision to move from casual snowboarding to competitive snowboarding?
Oh man, that was a mistake. A lot of my life is a mistake, but a calculated mistake.
Yeah.
I was hanging out with friends. I really did not like to feel like I started from behind. Oh, the bullying high school joke used to be like, "Oh, you're from Africa. Oh, what can you do?" And I did not like that. My whole goal was to change the narrative, change how you saw me. I don't care if you think I come from a broken home. I am as equal as you. I don't know what you think or what your mother told you, but my mother told me she likes me as much as your mother tells you she likes you. So thank you very much, sir. I am doing this. And my friends had that whole competition. Oh, no, you never catch up. So we entered into a competition. I think it was in high school. So in secondary, I entered into a competition. I end up winning the competition. And what happens is, once again, I'm covered up head to toe. The announcer cannot pronounce my name. You know, they're like, Mawejje, Mawejje. What is Mawejje? They call it Mawejje, Mawejje. You know, he could not get it. And he thought I was from nowhere or somewhere. So I come up, take off my face mask, take off my goggles. Like, oh, it's a black man. Wait, what? So everything, you know, the shock aspect of, you know, America that, you know, some people can't do certain sports. And they were so shocked that I won. But first of all, they're like, where's this name from? Where are you from? How did you enter the competition? I was like, oh, you know, I've been snowboarding for 2 years. I just entered. I paid the same fee as everybody else. I think it's fair. I tried my best. I think my best put me on top. And from there on, it was like a snowball effect. You know, it was like competition. And just that I built off that same excitement and, you know, took what people, you know, I think the announcer was trying to be funny and make fun of me, but, you know, I've always been a champ, you know, and I look at it as like, no, you're never going to break me down. I am the only person that could break me down. So I took it as a joke, flipped to what he was trying to say, you know, I made a little fun of myself. Everybody was like, oh, that guy's pretty funny, you know, became the person like, you know, because there's always a little racism, a little bit of like, you know, going to make fun of you, but it's how thick your skin is. And I just had thicker skin at that point. So I was like, yeah, you can make fun of me, but I just won. Give me my trophy, give me my cash. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah.
And before you know it, I'm trying out for the Olympics. So yeah.
And how did you deal with like the expense of the sport? Because I do know like winter sports are just not, it's not a cheap sport. And that's maybe one of the, and we can have a conversation about this in terms of like equity, right? And why
Mhm.
children of color just don't have access to such sports, or children at risk don't have access to such sport. Can you just walk us through like, how did you even manage the expense of like the boards, the protective gear, like the jackets, the goggles, the mouth guards, right? Like all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think I think that conversation ties into that whole idea and proximity of saying you're not going to break me down and I'm here to be equal because the idea of I would not give up allowed me to look for there's some kids even today getting into the sports, some wealthier kids or even if they're from middle class, they will not wear somebody else's shoes. I mean, I came from a family of like 6, 7. I don't care how many people have put their feet in those shoes. I'll wear them. So for the first year and a half, I wore a size, the boot, the shoe that you're supposed to wear was a whole size and a half bigger. I wore a woman's jacket and a women's pants for 2 seasons. I was getting made fun of every day, but I didn't have anything else. And it was so cold. And these kids would like, they'll point fingers, they'll make fun. You just like want to cry, but you're like, oh, whatever, I'm just here. But I was like, I'll take whatever. So I would go to Lost and Found, and my gloves have holes in them. Lost and Found. Hey, sir, is this free? Oh yeah, people have lost them. Go for it. Go through that. I don't care. Kids are like, oh, you're homeless. What? I'm like, okay, I'll take that ownership. You already think I'm below you, so below you, I can wear whatever. And it was like a flip of the switch. One day I'm wearing like clothes from donated hand-me-downs. The next day, companies are calling me to be like, you need to wear our stuff, So it's like what I like to tell anybody is don't look at it as the expense, just look at it as the heart. There's a
Yeah.
skill to it. There's something to learn. You look at Pele, my favorite, soccer player. Pele comes from nothing. He was kicking, I think it was mangoes to try to learn his whole skill of like, football. And he
Right.
got so good. And then once he was good, all the Nikes, all those companies just come. But you
Right.
need the skill for them to come.
That's true. That's true. And it's one of those things where when you listen to people tell their story, it's very easy for them to tell you the easy part of it. But the
Mm-hmm.
reason why we even did this whole thing is for people to understand that like to make it, you have to gravel. You have to dig down there and put your feet in and be like, I'm in to the end. I'm not in just for 1 month or 2 months. Like, to imagine that you wore like women's pants and the jacket for 2 years. Like that's dedication. It's not just like I'm gonna do it for one competition and I'm done. And so, how did you get yourself? Get like what helped you grow your mindset? You have that very resilient mindset.
I think that's just. I come from, that's Africa, that's Uganda, the survival of the fittest idea of, big family, coming from a big family, lots of kids, and just, the first thing that I love my mom for it, and I will always be grateful for, not just for her bringing us to America, but the first thing she said, she's like, you need to take away all those ideas of what you thought America is. This is not heaven. And you need to understand you come from nothing, and this is something. But you gotta pick up the gold. There's gold on the roads, but you gotta pick it up. No one just hands you a whole pot of gold. Um, and from day one, she would keep, even when we had our little indifferences, even when we're, not seeing eye to eye, she always was like making that message very clear of like, what, there's a reason you came here. You came here for education. You came here to better your life. So that is the main line of it. And you gotta just remember where you came from and not where you're sitting at. Because sometimes you get comfortable, you're sitting in a nice house or you're sitting in an apartment, you're like, oh, even if you're in Uganda, you're like, oh, I've made it. But you forget what it took to build that whole foundation. So I think that's
Right.
where it comes from.
And the idea that you can build everything and lose it in one day, and that is very true and very accurate, and it still holds true.
Yeah.
So guess from here, I after you've been competing in the after school program, when do we move to Wyoming?
I moved to Wyoming in high school.
Okay.
I had been at private school for 3 years in America. So I hated boarding school. I went to boarding school. Everybody knows, man, the cane was the way of boarding school. So I hated everything having to do with boarding school because of the cane. And in America, I thought boarding school was the same. You know, teachers beat kids. You know, your parents
What
just
boarding
drop
school
you
was it,
off.
if you don't mind us asking?
Man, what boarding school I went to in America? I went
Yeah.
to Phillips Exeter, and I also went to
Oh.
Fan. Yeah.
Oh, I
I,
know.
I I use my brains a little bit, you know. But
That's a
the
very
beauty of
hard
that
school to
whole
get
story,
into.
I, I have some impressive sisters. You know, they set the bar very high, especially coming out of like my older sister coming out of Gaza was a whole mindset of like, oh, I went to Gaza, I need to, and she fought to get into Gaza. It wasn't like, you know, we're a family of somebody or, you know, somebody knows us. It was just like pure fight, get in. You know, you come get visited during visitation day. Your dad comes and just brings like, you know, some, you know, chicken and, you know, rice, and that's it. No suitcases of things. So when she came here, she just had such a high bar of like what education was that it just slowly trickled down to myself, you know. Um, so I think that's how I got into those private schools, but I don't know,
Okay,
could
so
have been
how do
luck.
we make the transition from Exeter to Wyoming?
I made some good friends. From the age of 14 to 16, I was pretty lost. And lost, I mean by what I pictured to be family and kind of the household structure had been crumbled, as I told you earlier in my conversation, and kind of the home identity had changed. So I was living with a guardian. Her name was Susan, and she was an older lady. Her kids were out of the house at the time, so she really had a very almost like a Mother Teresa type of heart. You know, I'm trying to, you know, let's take care of the whole village. Let's give you the same opportunities as kids here. And throughout that whole stay, 1 year and a half into it, her husband actually developed cancer, a deadly cancer. And that cancer kind of, it did not take away. It is what God meant to happen, but really he allowed her, and it happened to be that she had to transition her focus to try to take care of her husband. And that was the reason of why I had to go to, you know, boarding school and kind of find a home, because I couldn't go back home to my mom. So I needed to have a place to stay full time and also go to school. So I couldn't stay on the streets. I couldn't. So the best thing was to go to boarding school. And throughout that time when I was going to boarding school, my earlier friends that I'd played soccer with when I just came to the US, we continued that relationship. And as I got better with the American lingo and becoming an American teenager, obviously those relationships grew. And excuse me, from the growth of those relationships, um, his family, every time I'd go home, I'd go to his family's house. Every time you know, it was holiday, I didn't have a place to go, I'd go back to Susan. Susan needs the house clean because you can't bring germs in because of the type of cancer. I'll go to his house. And one day his family just asked for legal guardianship and to see if I can, you know, join them because they were moving out of the state. So my only other option was to just kind of be like, oh, I'm back to square one where I started, or I can just move. So I moved with them.
Nice. So how was the transition from the East Coast to the Midwest in the middle of nowhere?
Oh man, I mean, actually, this was the West. So this is what they call cowboy country. You know, this is definitely where the nigga cannot be walking around, you know, aimlessly. My very first week, I swear to you, if anybody on this live chat or anything thinks I'm lying, you can Google my name, you can find it. They try to lynch me my very first week. And if you want to know the reason why I almost got put a rope around my neck, I was selling. I joined the football team just because every chapter I use sports to try to, you know, get into the environment. At this time, I was playing American football. I was, you know, becoming my own as an athlete. So I was 16 years old. You know, I was developing as a teenager. My body was just coming in its own. So I was really becoming very good at what I was doing. And the team wanted me to try to, you know, go into the community, a small downtown sell cards that say, hey, we are open, there's a season opener, you know, come support the team. Man, this guy comes up to me. I'm with my best friend's sister, who's now my new sister, and I'm supposed to be babysitting her. She's a white little girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, and this guy comes up to me, tries to take her, and I was told I can't give the child to anybody. I mean, it's on my watch. I'm new to the family, trying to be that whole, like, you know, my parents raised me right in Africa. I'm responsible. And I'm in a situation where this guy's trying to put the child in the car. So I'm like, no, you can't do that. And he brings out the gun, brings out the rope. He's like, nigger, you know, you're not supposed to be around this white girl. Like, what are you doing? Your kind's never supposed to be near her. I'm taking her with me. And I'm like, man, so I had a choice to make. If the girl is fighting, she's like, no, like she's trying to explain the whole story. So it's funny because she's young. She was 8 at the time, and she's like, so this is my brother, but he's black from another mother. Like, so it's an 8-year-old trying to explain how I relate to her. This guy's like, you know, it doesn't sound right. Like, not believing an 8-year-old who's explaining it to her. I'm the only black person in, not the state, I want to say in the next 100 miles. So this is the West. You know, you see no one. Everybody has a circle looking at me. They're like, oh, nigga, where you from? Where you coming from? So this is a town where they know everybody. You know, if somebody had a daughter, you know them. So I'm just new to this family, and my family that moved, they knew there's a white family that moved, but they didn't know a black family moved. Here's this black kid on the street. You know, the guy starts tying his noose. I start crying. I used to wear earrings, like these big earrings. I used to wear like this big chain, big clothes. That was the day I stopped wearing earrings. I ripped the earrings out. I was like, man, I'm not going to die in fucking the West out here in God's country, like trying to be a cowboy, like oh my God, it was the scariest day of my life. Just like, I decided I was going to fight him. At that time, I'd come from Massachusetts, which is a bigger state. I was really good at sports because I'd used sports to go to private school. I had come off being a state champion wrestler, so I picked up wrestling because I had anger management. And what the school did to try to combat my anger management and my broken homeness from coming from a broken home and my family issues is I had counseling. And in counseling, the counselor made me join wrestling. And so in wrestling, I got good at it just like the other sport, and I became a state champion. So flying from Massachusetts to Wyoming, I had this chip on my shoulder of like, oh, you know, I'm a freshman in high school. I'm a sophomore. Freshman year, I was the state champion in a bigger city where all these like, you know, country boys, you know. So this guy is trying to fight me, and I was like, all right, let's go. He's like 5'5". I'm 6 feet standing up. Guy's 5'5". So I was ready to fight, and police got involved. Anyways, man, I swear to you, Wyoming is no joke. It will make you a man.
But did you end up like staying with your sister now? Did you
Yeah, I
get to
ended up
keep her?
staying in Wyoming. I've been a resident of Wyoming to this day. 10
Yeah.
years later, I
Oh,
stayed
wow.
in Wyoming. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've moved over to the West Coast. Let's continue through competitive snowboarding. So where does it go from there?
Well, the West Coast, we had moved to a place where it was the mecca of snowboarding. So this was the place you go. The biggest reason of moving is my best friend at the time, my new brother now. He wanted to be a professional snowboarder on the U.S. snowboarding team. So his whole goal was to snowboard at the Olympic level. And the reason why I was good is because we'll go sit at the dinner table, you know, everybody's bragging how they're good. So my whole thing was if as long as I catch up to my brothers, life is good. And these guys were getting looked at the US team is looking at them as the future. So I'm like, I just gotta get as good as them. So we moved to a place where we went from going to school all the time and maybe snowboarding every once in a while to you snowboard majority of your time and then you go to school at night. So it became a full-time job. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So when did you choose to start Olympic trials?
Ah, man. Olympic trials. Olympic trials had to cheat. It was just a little dream. We watched Cool Runnings one day. I don't know if you guys know about Cool Runnings. Is a movie about the Jamaican bobsled team, 1992 Olympics.
Yeah.
Jamaican team is like, oh, we're from Jamaica. We're gonna make a team. And going back to being made fun of and always being the only black person, people would like call me the Jamaican bobsled team all the time. So one day I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start the Ugandan bobsled team. This is the Ugandan Cool Running. So I just scrambled everything and worked for 2 summers. I was working at Mass General Hospital at the time during the summer, and then I would work in a restaurant at the time. And we saved up all the little money I had. My brother was working at the same time as well. And on our 18th birthday, we decided we're gonna go. I was gonna take him back to where I was from. So I was gonna go see my father for the first time and go to Africa. And while I was in Africa, I was going to use that as a chance to try to meet with the Ministry of Sport and all that. And I knew nobody. Like this was like kids being wishful. So I told myself, you know what? I'm going to Uganda. We had saved up. We did a little fundraiser at school. We got our school involved. We got everybody involved, and we got some cameras, and we went to Uganda. And we had to convince the Ugandan Board of Ministry to try to open up a federation for winter before I can start to say I want to do Olympic trials. Show up to the first minister. Obviously, you have to pay a little cash. Just like the system works. And the guy, after taking all the little monies that we had made the whole summer, just looks at me and is like, yeah, Ugandans don't know anything about snow. We don't have that here. Please go back to America. I'm like, we have nothing, no cash. So we called BBC News and we said, all right, we're going to just do this like millennials. We're going to get on the news. We're going to highlight my story. So we called BBC News. We're like, I'm an African. I'm very talented. I'm going to go to the Olympics for America, for Africa. They're like, oh, where are you at? Let's say a story. So they sent a BBC person to Uganda who was in Kenya at the time. They send him over to Uganda, does a whole story. And a week later, we bring the BBC people to the same minister. So we tricked him. We used a little American magic. We're like, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics, but here's this cameras like right on his face. And this guy's like, oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh, Uganda can go to right in front of the cameras as they like, have him like trapped. And he just through that, he calls, at the time it was Mr. Donald Vega, Dr. Donald. He calls him. And we actually get to the right person who was actually trying to put Uganda on the map. So we try to apply. We put in the application. I spent another 6 months working, and this is while I'm part-time working, going to school, because remember I'm Ugandan, so my whole dream was to be a doctor. That's still my dream, but I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. So I was working at Mass General Hospital in the neuro-oncology department. So this is the cancer department, and the cancer ties in because my guardian, the lady I told you about earlier, her husband had cancer. So that when he starts to fight his cancer battle, that's when I start to study cancer and get involved in the hospital. So this whole time I'm working, going to school and working. So working in the hospital, working restaurants and going to school while trying to start the federation. We made a couple calls to Switzerland and we sent in my performance the last few years. We sent in the points, and during the annual meeting, I qualified just by the points. So any country in the world can qualify for the Olympics if the participant and the athlete can prove they're born in the country and they can prove they can perform in the sport of choice. So if it's swimming, you have to swim a certain time. If it's running track, you have to run a certain time. And in snowboarding, I had to have a certain point differentiation collected up. And I was able to do that. And we spent those next 2 years studying the Ugandan Federation. So we do have a federation standing, and the goal of the federation is not just to represent myself. It's not an egotistical drive. It was really to live something for others so that they did not have to go through the same headaches that I went through, which is actually exciting because there's a girl from Virginia at the moment who's a figure skater. There's another younger girl from Canada figure skating. So it's a federation for how all country and everybody can utilize it to represent us, which is cool.
Well, first of all, that's really exciting because I think one, I think it's Walden, but there is something about like, we all want to take the path that's defined, but very few of
Mhm.
us are courageous enough to take the path that is not defined and blaze our own path. But the fact that you were just like, this is a sport, I want to compete in it, and it's going to suck in terms of trying to get somebody who's going to make a federation, because we all know anything to go through in Uganda takes forever. But the fact
Mhm.
that you did it for you, for your path, but also for other people, um, says a lot about you as a person, but also as an athlete. And those are things that you learn when you've not had anything. It's
Mhm.
very quick for you to give to other people. But when people have everything, they always forget that even when you have everything, don't forget the person behind you.
Mhm.
And so, you've talked us through getting the federation and all of that. We want to hear what happened at the last Winter Olympics.
Okay. Yeah. What happened at the last Winter Olympics?
Mhm.
So in 2018, and this is 2017, I was a I was just finishing my studies. So I did my degree in biochemistry and public health, pre-med. So I was just finishing my pre-med degree as I was finishing the trials, and I went for a competition in Kazakhstan. So here's another reason why I want to start a federation, because part of it is you find people that are very excited to find somebody like myself snowboarding. They're like, yes, you're moving the sport forward. Another part, you find a lot of people that are like, oh, wow, there's now people like you in the sport. They're almost like disgusted. They don't want the sport to move forward. They want it to be exclusive. So I fly to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is next to China, now by Mongolia. Um, Long flight, get in, never been to Kazakhstan. I've never been to any stands. And trust me, I mean, snowboarding has taken me around the world, and I would never have dreamt of being able to see as many countries as I have been able to see. And while in Kazakhstan at an Olympic trial, uh, we had to do culture night. And during culture night, I did not know, but I mean, I grew up eating sweet potatoes in matoke and like just very few taste buds. And in Kazakhstan, the culture, every country you go as a athlete or potential Olympic athlete, you have to try the culture. You have to embed yourself in the culture. Um, and they gave us food, and they gave a bit of food, and I got to eat my food. I'm chewing. It smells funny. It's funny. I just swallow. Half an hour later, I'm like, man, that did not sit right. And I find out they were serving hosts. So like hosts. And you gotta remember, I come from I'm living in Wyoming at the time. So Wyoming is the country of the cowboy. So the host is not something you eat. This is something people use. I've never ate host. I did not know people eat host. I was so disgusted. My body went into a reaction. And so I started having stomach aches. I'm throwing up. And when you are at an official Olympic event, every country brings their doctor. So America travels. If America track and field is traveling, they have their own doctor. American basketball has their own doctor. American tennis. Every sport from every country has their own doctor. Well, Team Uganda, I was kind of Team Uganda. I'm forking the whole bill of my own work, and so I don't have a doctor that I'm going to fly out and bring. I don't even know a doctor that would agree to be Team Uganda's doctor, except for myself. So I was like, I'll go be the doctor and be the doctor myself. Anyways, um, I end up in the hospital from the reaction from the food, and because it was an Olympic event, they had to go through testing. So they first, because you're a black athlete, they're like, oh, you're doping. So they did the doping testing, find out, oh, my blood is clean, everything is good. And they test my heart. And after they took care of the nausea in my stomach, they give me an anti-nausea pill. They're like, we have to make tests to make sure this did not happen because you're doping. I'm like, okay, rules of the Olympic Federation, I'll consider. And in between it, my heart rate sits at about 52 beats per minute. And that's because I live in high elevation. I train in high elevation in the mountains. So my heart rate has slowed down and it's at an athletic level. For Kazakhs, their heart rate is at normal level, which is 77 beats per minute. And the doctors checking my heart thought that a black African, because I show up everywhere as a Ugandan, so they just read Ugandan like he can't have better heart or be in better condition, even as an athlete. And she was so in disbelief that my heart was so slow of beating that she thought I had a hole in my heart. So she puts an injection in my chest. The injection creates a trigger because it was speed. It was injection to try to speed up my heart rate to make sure my heart's not slowing down in compulsion. So she actually did the opposite to my heart, which I showed up ready for competition, well tested, came from like an American, almost like American Olympic factory, because that's how you come out of. You go to testing before you go to events, you know, and you show up so that you don't have to get testing in a foreign country. She ends up spiking my heart, giving me a heart attack, a cardiac induced, a hospital induced heart attack. My body goes into reaction because the medication, they don't know if it's expired or not. You can't read any of the medication because it's in Russian dialect, and it became a big mess. So I had to go back home. I had to go to Mass General. I had to get my whole body flashed from the medication. They had to monitor my whole body, redo tests, and I made the decision to just not, you know, continue with competing. I made that decision because I love Uganda and everything, and they can say verbally they support you, but until they put money behind it, I was able to call all my sponsors who I was working with, tell them my reasonings, and with their support, and since I was paying all my bills for my coaches, my competitions and everything, I was free to make that decision to continue my education in medicine and postpone my Olympic run.
And first of all, you're in a whole other country and you get a heart attack. Is anyone liable for the fact that they almost killed you in a whole other country?
Man, people are trying to kill me off. Too many people. No, no. At first they thought I was like, so I have dual citizenship at this point. And at first they thought I was an African coming in from Africa. They couldn't check any of my visas. We did have a delegate from Uganda there. And what ended up happening, I called both my mothers, my African mother and my white mother. So I just had my white mother fly over, and it became a big thing because, you know, it turns out I'm an American athlete. It's a liability to try to do anything. You can't go to an hospital as an athlete to a foreign hospital because there's a fear by the IOC that the hospital, say you're a competitive athlete, the hospital could drug you or they could try to do something. So in my case, that's kind of what happened. And, you know, the IOC took a little liability. The hospital, the country took liability. So they covered my medical bills in Kazakhstan and my flight home. And the doctor obviously had some type of discipline happen to them. But yeah, they messed up big because they took away a big dream and a big opportunity. Or like I like to think about it, they created even a better opportunity. They gave me 4 more years to sharpen my tools, to get better at what I was doing, solidify what I stand for, and make a better run for the 2022 campaign.
So I'm glad you talked about that, because the next question that we're all wondering, will you be competing in the next Winter Olympics?
I mean, minus COVID, I was on track. So this year, I've been able to qualify Uganda at 3 world championships. So 3-time world championships. This year would have been our 4th world championships, which I was able to qualify for from this past season. It's happening in China. And after that, it's 2022 Beijing Games. So given the pace I've been at and I was on, I'm supposed to be in Beijing. We're just kind of waiting, you know, the whole world is upside down a little bit, but.
Right.
Yes.
But are you still able to practice? Are you even able to train at all?
I've been able to train. For the past 4 years since that incident, I became a better athlete. So obviously in the sport, my profile raised a little bit. My training facilities got better. The better you get, the more access you get. And now I live in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, where the U.S. Olympic facilities are based out of, especially for snowboarding. I train 5 days a week, and actually because of COVID, it was better. I utilized the time to get better from my previous injuries. I got surgery as COVID happened. I had reconstructive shoulder surgery, utilized the 6 months to, my shoulder's back to normal, almost like fix the racing car machine. And
There you go.
now it's ready. I'm ready to get back in the races. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to leave time for to ask you questions, but I think my final one before we open it up to questions would be, how have you managed to balance sports and like snowboarding? Because that must be tough, right?
I mean, yeah, but like the way I look at it is, am I muted? Can you hear me? Yeah, I think it might be tough, but the way I look at it is, man, we come from so much adversity and like, from where we started, my sisters and I, my whole family to where I'm at right now. I mean, anything forward is not that much of a challenge. It's just a speed bump. And I'm all about problem solving. If something happens and it's a roadblock, there's always ways around it. So finding the flow and trying to find the solution for any problem, that's how I balance it. Nobody said it's easy. Nobody said you get to sleep a lot. I mean, I've been up since 5 a.m. this morning. You work all day, you sleep little, and yeah, the way I look at it is like, I'm young right now. I could try to do it all as much as I can for as long as I can, and as things slow down, I will definitely make the adjustments.
Right. And any advice, one for Ugandan athletes that are looking to go into winter sports, because there's not really a path drawn out there for what they're supposed to do?
I think my advice is there's not really a path, but there is. I mean, in today's world with social media and how connected the world is, there's people out there. There's people like myself. Like, I'm such an open book and willing to speak to anybody and everybody about, what do you need to do next? What is it going to take? From the financial aspects to the logistics to the coachings to the policies. I mean, if you really want to make anything happen in today's world, you can make it happen.
That's true. And how do you see yourself making an impact in Uganda itself for winter sports?
I mean, take winter sports aside, my whole thing, rest in peace, Chadwick. I mean, King T'Challa, the whole idea of changing the African narrative has been and is and will forever be my platform that I stand on. I am here because so many people looked at me, or enough people looked at me and said, you don't belong. But I'm also here because enough people looked at me and it's like, it is time for Africa to belong, and it's time for you to be on the same table as us. So you have enough people on both sides to where, from whether it's speaking on child equality or taking my education to moving it to policy and reform with the, General Assembly and the UN to whatever opportunity I get, it's really, if I die tomorrow, I want people to know that I try to change the narrative and I try to give back to Uganda. Uganda will never live my system. I don't care how far I go, what has happened in my life. I remember where I come from. I know my parents. I know my home. I know my culture. And I like my culture. Like, America is cool and all, but I think my culture is better.
So final question before I turn you over to my head of communications. Where do we see Brolin Mawejje in the next 10 years?
I don't know, man. I ask myself that same question. I'm just working hard, making sure my mama's proud of me, making sure she's smiling and I can make her happy. As long as I can get to a point of where I can take care of my mama and just, take care of my future generation, be able to, give back to my home. Sky's the limit. I'm not sure what tomorrow has to hold, but I just do know that I have plans in works to just put Uganda on the map. I'm really trying to grow a global brand and well-respected, not just brand, but image and person, and, become a world leader.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Do I not totally believe that? Like, come on, you've come this far. Like, you're there. already.
Yeah, one sec. I think you cut out for a second.
Sure.
Repeat that one more time.
Oh, I'm going to turn you over to Francis, who is my head of communications, and he has a couple questions. And I will get the questions from the people on Facebook Live, and I will share them with you so you can get some answers to people.
Sounds good.
Okay. Francis, Brolin is all yours.
Hey, Brolin.
Hello, how you doing, Francis?
Nice. Good. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
And I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for sharing your inspirational story with us. It was really touching. You know, there's a lot of takeaways, and you know, you're definitely a role model or someone people can look up to. You know, they can look up to your story, and you know, be inspired and motivated to like chase their goals and dreams. So I really thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna run through the questions really fast, and you know, you can answer them to the best of your knowledge. Yeah, and another thing I wanted to put in, or squeeze in rather, was I got to watch your documentary Far From Home online, and I really recommend, you know, everyone who's on this. I put the link in the chat. You know, go give it a look. It's a really good story. You know, I was really touched. But I highly recommend everyone take a look. So we have the first question from Pauline Nalvega, which is, what is the best advice ever given to you?
Miss Pauline, I think the best advice ever given to me is believe in yourself and don't crack. You know, it goes back to that same motto of never give up. You know, it's hard to see the finish line on anything, and it's sometimes hard to start. But the easiest thing also that can happen is just starting. And if you start and you never give up, you never know where things could go. So I would just say never give up.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Pauline, for the question. I actually have a question of my own. You know, what's your motivation, you know, to juggle all these things that you're doing, you know, snowboarding, school, work, you know, how do you juggle all these things and still, you know, be on the right track? Do we lose him? Oh, okay. We'll be right back.
Brolin, okay, there
Hello?
he is. Yeah.
Oh,
there
did
go.
you? Sorry. Somebody called me through my son.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay.
You know, the question was what is my motivation to keep going? I think my motivation is my past. My past and my future are so intertwined where my past is my fear, but yet it's also my discomfort. And I really never want to find myself comfortable because, you know, having grown up in a place where I was not comfortable ever, it allowed me to find the best me ever, push myself in many different envelopes. So I'd say that, yeah.
Yeah, so for any one of our other viewers who have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box, and we'll ask Brolin for sure. Oh, I also wanted to ask, what was it snowboarding for the first time? Because I have a picture in my head of what it might look like if I ever even tried to do that, you know, and it probably go horrible. But you know, what was it like for you? Was it terrifying? Was it were you calm about it, or?
Oh man, it's the same idea that they tell people like jumping out of a plane. It's
Yeah.
you will never feel alive again. You know, it's the most alive, scary, terrifying, but yet exciting feeling that you ever feel. Especially once you do it, like there's different levels of mountains. You could start on a little bunny hill, a little slope, but once you get to the
Yeah.
levels of, you know, big mountains like Alaska and what I'm riding right now, where you're like, wow, I'm playing with death every single day. You definitely feel alive.
One wrong move and it's over.
Oh man, it's the hospital for you if it's not the grave. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the next question from Facebook. How have you found resources for mental health?
How have I found resources for mental health? I think, I mean, that's a challenging topic, and thank you for whoever asked the question. I mean, it's an important subject and topic to talk about, and I think it's a battle that I'm still battling and finding and still looking for those resources. But
Yeah,
through friendships, I've created some great friendships. I've started to rekindle my relationships, especially with my siblings and with my parents, both biological and foster parents.
yeah.
And I think that's really what I use now. That's my resource.
Great, great. Pauline again has another question. Any advice to someone who wants to start snowboarding?
Any advice? You just gotta go out there, and I mean, it depends. If you're in Uganda and you want to start, you know, snowboarding, I would say look into the skating. You know, try to step on a skateboard. I know it's such a young thing, but or if you get close to water, try to surf. But if you can get to snow, just try it out.
Take the first step and see where it
Yeah.
takes you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from Patricia. What do you hope your legacy will be?
Man, legacy is a big driving factor for myself. I hope my legacy is something that lands in the history books somewhere, you know, to be quite honest, at least on my snowboarding aspects. Um, I just hope my legacy could be looked back as somebody who tried to make an impact and make a name for Uganda.
I respect that. Respect that. Also, part two of the question from Patricia. How have you dealt with the injuries you've faced over the years in the sport?
And the injuries are hard. I just actually got off surgery. I don't know if you guys could see that. I just got off like a full reconstructive like shoulder surgery.
Yeah,
I mean, God put it in my head, and it's
yeah,
God's will. You know, this is something that was written, and I'm not the one to unwrite it. So the injuries are just part of the game. You know,
yeah,
it's really bad and shitty when it happens, but it allows you to look deeper inside and, you know, really find your purpose. So I just deal with them. You know.
yeah. I feel like this is where the mental piece comes into play. You know, like some people recover from injuries, but mentally they won't be there. Like they'll go back and snowboard or play whatever sport they play, but they might not have moved on from it, you know? But you know, if
Yeah.
you surround yourself with the right people and you have the right mentality, you know, more times than you know, you can get past it.
No, yeah, I believe that, man. I completely second that. Like my heart attack, what happened in the hospital, I never, as soon as it happened, I told my coach, everybody, don't tell me. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I don't care. You know, it's not, I didn't die. Okay. I don't want to know. So I just, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, next question from JP John Muumba. Has your faith been a factor in your endeavors?
Man, that's
So
my faith being,
religion and stuff, yeah.
I mean, to some degree, I did come from a very, you know, faithful, religious family. To some degree, but I'm also a scientist, so I look at it as like both my fate and preparation. You just got to prepare. Um, there's no athlete out there that shows up and does not prepare. So
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, so the next question is from Winnie Nampera. What are some of the things you wish you did differently along your journey to success?
man, I don't know if my journey is to success yet, but thank you. I think the what I would have done differently is I would have pulled my community more along with it. I think I've done a lot of work silently and not in front of the Ugandan audience as much. I think to do it a little different, I would have brought them along.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. I know you had a hard time, getting involved with the people involved in making the federation in Uganda and stuff. I saw it through the documentary, but it turns out you had a better strategy to really get things going, and
Mm-hmm.
it always feels like back home you always have to resort to like tactics to really get what you want. And it shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
like that, but yeah. So we also want to ask about success versus greatness. We know different people have different definitions. Some people think both success and greatness are the same. Some people say they're different. So I'm just gonna go out and ask you straight up, what does success mean to you? What does greatness mean to you? Or how would you define them?
I mean, everybody defines the idea of success a little different, like you said. Um, but greatness is almost like the golden rule. You know what's wrong and right, and the idea of when somebody has worked for a certain level of greatness or a certain level of achievement. I mean, my greatest examples in my life is like Kobe Bryant, when he died, or as recent like King T'Challa Chadwick, who
Yeah.
just passed away. I think that is, for me, that's greatness. Yes, they're successful. Are they successful in front of their families? Yes. Are they successful in what people see in the media? Yes, but um, they're a little bit different for myself. Success for me is making my mother happy, making my mother feel very proud, and letting her know that every single day she's on this planet, she's worthy, and she made the right decision in like whether in anything she went through or giving birth to myself. So that's for me success. What greatness is aging my name into, whether it's anywhere I go, but aging my name into history. So moving from being a national brand or a kind of a community brand to a global name, that's greatness.
Great. We were talking with Patricia. I think she pointed out in the beginning that we got this whole idea of success versus greatness from a commencement speech by Steve Harvey at
Mm-hmm.
Alabama State University, where he was like, success is for you.
Mm-hmm.
So success can mean, you got a high school degree, college degree, master's, you got a job. That's for you. But greatness is, you know making someone's life different, having that impact on someone else's life, which, like you said, Kobe Bryant had that effect on people. The
Mm-hmm.
late King T'Challa had that effect on people. You find those different people that have managed to become great. They somehow, it went beyond them. Like
Yeah.
in whatever field they were doing or whatever work they were doing, what they did really touched people and changed uh, someone's life out there in whatever respect. And you have to put your hands down and really use that as a yardstick for everyone coming up,
Yeah.
especially the youth. And I feel like you're in a you're on good track to, like, do that. You just keep going. I'm pretty sure people who have watched this conversation with you and Patricia, can really see that you really want the best for the sport. You really want to build the sport both back home in Uganda, and of course, propel yourself to a global level as well. But the thing I like about you is you want the country to grow with you, Uganda, no matter what, and you have that patriotism that is very rare for some kids that come over here, So believe it or you, we can laugh about it, but it's the truth. People tend to forget their roots. They tend to forget where they're coming from. When they come here and something changes, and I don't know what happens, but yeah, it's good that you've stayed true to who you are, and you're definitely making your parents proud by continuing your journey to become a doctor, while pursuing your Olympic dream. So yeah, from me, I'm more into sports than my sister, so I'm rooting for you. I'll watch the Winter Olympics just for you. I know I'll be watching. I'll go to watch Brolin, Mawejje. The other people don't really matter, but I'll go just to watch you
Appreciate
represent our country. Yeah. So I don't know if there is any other questions on here. No. I'll
from my end, honestly, and I had a conversation with you before you even agreed to do this, and my brother's touched it a little bit. For me, like looking for the people in this series, I was so intentional because I just wanted people that hadn't taken advantage of the narrative, but had told it as authentically and as truly as they could. And why I put you at the end is for that reason, because I knew you would just keep it 100% and just say, hey, it wasn't beautiful and shiny rainbows and all, it's not like there was never rain, it wasn't a bright day every day, but also that it's not impossible. It never will be impossible. Like that word even is not a word, so it's just like, it shouldn't be something that should be etched into our minds at all. And so even earlier today, when I was doing the recording to like get everyone pumped for this, I was telling them, like, if you think you've heard an interesting story, wait till you hear Brolin's story. It's gonna just like blow you out of the park. It's just be like, what? There's no way. But honestly, thank you. And I look forward to working with you on more of Success versus Greatness. Like, this is a conversation that needs to reach other people, other communities, more young people that look like us, that have our experience. Because as you said, for so long, people will tell you, you don't belong, you don't fit in, you can't make it. And the can'ts are usually more than the cans. But that mental resilience is something that needs to be taught, needs to be encouraged, and needs to be spread. So thank you. We have about 10 minutes to go. I don't know if you have anything else to say, but I want to wrap up the Facebook soon. So I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah, well, I want to say I'm honored. I do want to thank you, Francis. Thank you, Patricia, for the opportunity, and just I'm just honored that you reached out. I'm honored to hopefully I did it justice. Hopefully I answered the majority of people's questions, and that was the whole aspect of it. Is just come here, just tell my truth. It's the age of living your truth and telling that, and I'm easy to reach. If anybody ever needs to reach me for anything, and I appreciate it. I'm stoked to grow with y'all, see what you guys do, and be an audience member.
Right.
On this whole series for sure.
Oh, you don't know. We're highly considering, because COVID is messing everything up, but we do want to have an in-person sit down with all the speakers in each series. So you might have to come back to Massachusetts. I'm just telling you, So if you didn't think you'd come to Massachusetts, this might be one of the reasons you come to Massachusetts.
I always love visiting, so I'll be back. Mass General is a home for me, so I'm always happy.
100%. And to all the people on this call, you can still be a doctor and be an Olympic athlete. Just saying.
Oh, yeah. Don't let them tell her different. You can do it all.
100%.